Hello and welcome. My name is Graham Gaither, and I'm here with the Native American Agriculture Fund. On today's webinar, I'm going to be walking you through an application process for a USDA-NIFA grant opportunity. That's Enhancing Agricultural Opportunities for Military Veterans Competitive Grants Program, or AgVets for short. Now here at NAAF, we have made an application guide, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what this application guide covers, go through a majority of the application guide itself. And we made this application guide because the RFA and application guide from USDA for this grant program are quite long, and there's a lot of technical language. So we wanted to help break it down for any interested parties that want a crash course, so to speak, on the meat and potatoes of this grant program. And so just for further clarification, when I say USDA-NIFA, that's the United States Department of Agriculture, and NIFA is the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. So much of the grant programming and technical support and documentation is going to be NIFA specific, not just USDA specific. So once again, hello and welcome. My name is Graham Gaither. I'm here with the Native American Agriculture Fund, and today's webinar is going to be a walkthrough for a unique grant opportunity that is meant to increase the capacity of veterans and their ability to access careers in the agricultural and food sectors. This opportunity is the Enhancing Agricultural Opportunities for Military Veterans Competitive Grants Program, or AgVets for short. And it's quite a lengthy application process. And so we want to use this guide as a way to help any interested nonprofit organizations in crafting the strongest possible application that they can. Now, this grant program is administered by the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, and through them, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NIFA. The funding amount is going to be $9.595 million. It's just about $10 million for fiscal year 20, and a little under $5 million at 4.84 for fiscal year 21. So the actual application guide that we'll be going through is an application guide that has been drafted by me at the Native American Agriculture Fund. The majority of the application guides through USDA are highly technical, they're very long, and we thought it would be best to have a shortened, more concise version that had all the information placed up front. So first, an introduction. What is AgVet? As mentioned earlier, it's a grant program that is meant to increase the number of veterans that are entering the agricultural and food sector job force. Now, the major focuses of its AgVet program is to create programming or organizations that are educating veterans as they transition out of the military, and this is going to be done through comprehensive hands-on learning and educational classroom learning. And again, the end goal should be to have careers in the food and ag sector. So there's two distinct slices to this pie in having a hands-on practical side of knowledge and a more educational curriculum. Now, because this webinar is based on NAAF's resource guide and application guide, I think it would be best for everyone to have access to that while you walk through this webinar. You can find that at our website, nativeamericanagriculturefund.org. And at the very top of the website is a list of pages. Click Resources, And you would want to click the actual button resources. There's the drop-down items such as COVID-19 that will populate when you hover above it. Don't click those, just click resources itself. And one of the first things you'll see is an AgVet application guide. Go ahead and click that, download it, and follow along. Another thing that would be really useful to have, and it is referenced by our own application guide, is the RFA from USDA and NIFA's application guide. NIFA has their own application guide, and because this grant is administered through NIFA, much of the application materials and technical language and documentation are going to be NIFA specific, not just USDA specific. So something to keep in mind as you're starting to craft your application. Now, some real meats and potatoes kind of things, details and dates. For fiscal year 20, the amount is just under $10 million at $9.595 million, and that's for fiscal year 20. And fiscal year 21 is $4.845 million, a little under $5 million. So there's quite a lot of funding here to begin veteran-friendly programming. Now, the maximum award amount is $250,000 per year for up to 3 years for a large standard grant, and $100,000 per year for 3 years for a small standard grant. And those categories are defined within the application itself. The deadline for fiscal year 20 is June 26, 2020 at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And so that is coming up pretty quick. There is no letter of intent required. The start date that will be listed on your grant is September 15th. And we'll get into what that start date means a little later into the webinar. Finally, there is no cost share required, which is a really big incentive towards getting your budget to reflect your actual programmatic needs. Any important contacts are listed here, and this is going to be Brent Elrod at USDA. You can see his email right there, slightly different name in the email, and Sydney Turner. And we also have NIFA's mailing address in case you're needing to mail in anything physically. So once again, the project purpose is to increase the number of veterans gaining knowledge through comprehensive hands-on and immersive models and ranching programs leading to careers in the food and ag sector. So you're wanting to hit those two distinct ideas of on-site, practical, hands-on approaches and classroom education. One of the major things that you will want to align in your own application is that this project is aligned with USDA's strategic goal number 4, to facilitate rural prosperity and economic development. So strong applications will touch on these bullet points below. Once again, transitioning service members and veterans, making sure they're aware of USDA programs, making sure they understand how to use those programs and can use them effectively and access them. These are very, very big pieces of the application process. As we'll continue to see as we go throughout the webinar, ensuring that veterans can access USDA programs and collaborate and access other veteran-specific programming is a great way to strengthen your application, collaborating with programs and organizations that already have a proven track record in assisting veterans. The goals of the project is for veterans to achieve a comprehensive understanding of successful farm and ranch operation and management, making sure that you prepare them not only for a career in the food sector and food and ag sector, but also in making sure that it is a sustainable and comprehensive career. Offering workforce readiness and employment prospects is something that a strong application will consider. And then also including outreach to vets who may have previously participated in beginning farmer and rancher development programs or regional equivalent. As mentioned, aligning yourself with other organizations that have already done work with veterans is a very big boon to your application. Now, in terms of eligibility of who can apply for AgVet funding, only 501c3 nonprofit organizations are eligible. When it comes to that, if you are selected for funding, you are able to subgrant your funding to a non-eligible entity. That is to say, a nonprofit organization can receive a certain amount of funding and then make contracts or subawards to other organizations that are going to help them do the work that don't have to be nonprofit organizations themselves. So keep that in mind as you are crafting your application. These are standard choices on USDA application forms. So when it says project type extension, you will select that in your application, and grant type standard. And once again, you can have two types of applications that are standard, large and small, and they each get different amounts of funding at $250,000 or $100,000 per year for 3 years. In terms of project types, your project is going to address one or more of the following: non-formal education or an increase in food and ag literacy, promoting science-based agricultural literacy, building science-based capability in people, developing new applications of instructional tools and curriculums, offer non-formal learning programs, and develop programs that increase public knowledge and citizen engagement, especially those that lead to actions that protect or enhance the nation's food and ag sectors. And this can be a little broad, as you can see, that include environmental quality, community vitality, and public health and well-being. So this gives you some broadness in how you approach your program, because it doesn't have to just be getting veterans into farming specifically. The food and ag sector is extremely broad. And so you can have a large bent going towards conservation or food sovereignty, community health, and communicate that through your own application. In terms of deliverables, we're going to be going through quite a few of the deliverables that are going to be expected or sought after in this program. So the first is what they're going to be looking for in their personnel that are carrying out this project. The project team should have a demonstrated competency in implementing projects of comparable size and complexity. That's to say, if you are a part of an organization that serves a population of, say, 10 veterans, and you propose a project that will be serving 150, those aren't quite comparable. So be sure to sell the reality of what it is that you and your team are not only capable of doing, but have success doing, and celebrate that success throughout your application. Now, in the personnel section, you're going to want to discuss veteran engagement in ag that your organization has done, on-the-job training and education, apprenticeship, and business development activities for veterans that have been accomplished, and efforts to enhance and increase workforce readiness and employment prospects for service-disabled veterans. Now, here's a really good piece, including efforts that promote nature-based reintegration. For any organizations that are especially interested in getting their veterans refocused onto nature-based healing, such as equine therapy, this is an excellent route that you can take towards building up an organization that focuses on using nature-based healing and traditional ecological knowledge as a healing agent. Next, we have collaboration. Collaboration is another very large theme of this grant opportunity. And so they'll be looking for ways that you include outreach to veterans who may have participated in other organizations that already assist veterans. And this can include beginning farmer and rancher development program, and socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers and veteran farmers and ranchers program. That's also known as the 2501 program. They'll also be looking for organizations that have already connected with existing AgriBility programming. Now, this is an agricultural program for disabled persons. Again, continued collaboration, creating partnerships with extension risk management education centers, regional rural development centers, or similar regional equivalents. It'd be in your best interest to find out what other programs and organizations are doing within your region if you can't find a direct federal organization that is fitting these checkboxes. It's more about the work that you've been doing rather than the checkbox of I've been working with this particular organization. Now, collaborating with the Department of Veteran Affairs, again, regional, state, and local, and engaging with small business administration and their resource partners is a big boon. So that's the Veterans Business Outreach Center, Small Business Development Centers, Women's Business Centers, and Service Disabled Veteran Entrepreneurship Training Program. The wider that you have a net of collaboration and cooperation with other veteran serving programs, the stronger your application will be. And finally, we have engaged with the Department of Labor's Veterans Employment and Training Service. Sharing program info and resources to farm answers is also a real important one too. So there's a lot of opportunities if you have been working with other programs to list those collaborations and list that experience and success that you've had with existing programming as it relates to veterans. Now, actual deliverables. Big items are outreach, selection, and retention of participants that you had, creating collaborations with minority serving academic institutions, documenting curriculum development and use, aligning education and training with USDA programs, especially NRCS and rural development, and to generate recommendations to strengthen collaboration regarding veterans in the ag sector and how to best transition them. So while we've been talking about current collaborations, discussing the organizations that you wish to be collaborating with is a large piece of what the actual deliverable is. I understand I've been talking about things in the past tense, but listing the collaborations that you're interested in taking and planning on taking is a major piece of that actual deliverable. And then discussing how those collaborations will become the outreach, selection, and retention of your veterans and the administration of your programming is going to be within this section. Another large one is creating content deliverable through the extension program. This is a USDA program. And evaluation of program models to monitor and measure the impacts and effectiveness of your programs. Having a plan to document all of your actual impacts so that you can create reports and models is a large focus of this grant funding opportunity, as we'll continue to see later in the webinar. How do I apply? Well, you can find the grant funding opportunity on grants.gov. Its number is USDA-NIFA-OP-007512, but it's fairly simple to find. Go onto grants.gov and search AgVet, all one word, and it will be the only grant opportunity for you to see. Now, there is an application guide, as I discussed earlier. The application guide is referenced within this slideshow, but also within our own application guide at NAAF. I highly recommend that you download it. You can see the link right here. Excuse me. And this is a very technical guide. It's 89 pages, but it gives you exhaustive detail about what each and every form that you'll be looking at is. And so we reference it because at the end of the day, you're going to be looking at it anyway. Applications are made up of the following pieces. You'll have a project narrative. You'll have attachments, your key personnel. You'll have personal data, but that is voluntary. That's not necessary. You'll have a budget, a data management plan, a supplemental information form, and this is a long one, representations regarding felony conviction and tax delinquent status for corporate applicants. Now that last one is only if you are a corporation applying for this grant funding opportunity. Now, the project narrative is somewhat long. It's composed of these parts: an introduction, which is 2 pages, objectives and outcomes, your approach to your project, the personnel and resources that you'll be utilizing, the plan for outcome-based reporting, so how you plan on tracking all the results that you'll be getting, and a management, collaboration, and partnership plan. Now, attachments. Formatting is extremely important. As we'll see towards the end of the webinar, there are going to be 2 phases of accepting of your application. The first is an administrative review, which is where they review that all of your documentation has been entered correctly. So correct formatting is incredibly important, and you're going to want to triple check that, even quadruple check that before you submit, so that you don't get bucked off of their system because you didn't dot all your I's and cross all your T's. So you'll be submitting as an attachment a nonprofit status letter from the IRS, commitment letters, which you can see formatted below, and fiscal agent letters if necessary. And this will be necessary if the grant recipient is unable to accept federal funding. So they'll need a fiscal agent to accept that funding on their behalf. Now here we see bits and pieces of the resource guide that we're going to start referencing. So the research and related senior and key personnel profile. As you can see, when it says see part 5, section 5 of the application guide, that's referring to the NIFA application guide. If you're following along on NAAF's application guide, you'll see those same references. So this is a list of persons that will be involved in the project or program. For each person, you're going to need a biographical sketch and a current and pending supporting staff for the project director, PD, or principal investigator, PI, even if they received no salary. So that is to say, if you have a person who's integral to your project, even if they're not receiving salary, they still need to be listed as a key or senior personnel. And you can see a template for how to fill out that piece of the application at the link below, also linked within our own guide. Next is the research and related personal data. As I said before, this info is voluntary and not required, but if you are interested in filling it out, it is linked within our own guide as well. Here we have the research and related budget. The budget form is within the application itself, so please don't draft your own budget in Excel and try and import it. The USDA already has a way for you to upload your own budget within the application itself. In regards to indirect costs are essentially administrative costs. So they pay the recipient of the grant for non-project activities. That could be generally administrative activities. So for example, if you are a 501c3 and you're receiving $100,000, then whatever your IDC rate is, people who administer the funding, who take care of the finances within your organization, that is going to pay for their time, not necessarily the direct project time that the senior and key personnel are going to be using to carry out the project itself. Maximum IDCs can be calculated using two methods, and you will use the lesser of the two methods. So it can be the sum of your institution's negotiated IDC rate plus the rate charged by any subawardees. So if you are for example, a 501c3 and you have a rate of 12%, and you plan on subcontracting or subawarding your award to another organization, you would add their IDC rate with yours to get your total. In this case, it would be 24%. 24% of $100,000 is $24,000. And you would take that because it's below 30%. And 30% would cost more money. So you're going to take the lower of the two rates. You'll also need a data management plan. And the data management plan for NIFA-funded research, education, and extension projects can be found at this link or within our application guide directly. And the NIFA data management plan frequently asked questions can be found here or in our application guide directly as well. The supplemental information form, you're going to enter the following exactly as follows. And so I have them in quotes. So for field 2, you will enter the name of the grant program, Enhancing Agricultural Opportunities for Military Veterans, parentheses, AgVets, end parentheses, Competitive Grants Program, and the program code is AgVet. And then for field 8, you will have a conflict of interest list. These must be composed for each and every person who is in the senior and key personnel profile. And so, as we have the example here, if you have 4 key persons identified, you will draft 4 unique conflict of interest forms and then combine them into one PDF file and upload within your application. As I said earlier, formatting is extremely important. So please follow USDA's instructions specifically in getting each individual file created and then combined into one PDF file. You can find that at the link below or within our application guide. Oh, here we have our favorite long titles, and I'll just go ahead and say the ones with the longest titles tend to have the least amount of actual content attached to them. It's interesting. The representations regarding felony conviction and tax delinquent statuses for corporate applicants. If you are a corporate applicant, you must fill that out, and you can find that within our guide as well. As I said, there's 2 phases to the evaluation criteria. The first is the administrative requirements are met, all of your file names are correct, that you filled out the entire application to the specifications of USDA-NIFA. So please triple check that before you submit your application. The second, after you've passed the administrative requirements, is a actual review panel will look at your application. So we're going to go ahead and look at the requirements and qualities that the review panel will be looking for. So some of the themes that we've been talking about, you'll see here: partnerships and collaborations, relevancy, technical merit, achievability of your project, expertise and track record. That's your proven items that you've already accomplished. And here we go, another long one. This is adequacy of plans for evaluation, reporting, data management, and communicating findings and results beyond the immediate target audience. And so what this is based on the expertise and time commitment of the evaluation team members who have agreed to serve or been identified, and looking at how that folds into your project. And the adequacy of available support for the project. So partnerships and collaboration. This is one of the most important pieces from what I've seen within this application. Your ability to collaborate with existing veteran serving agencies and organizations is a very large piece of what's being reviewed. And so powerful applications will be sure to develop a broad and tightly knit collaborative network. So this determines to what extent your application represents an effective collaborative network or partnership. Effective meaning you're going to get a lot of what your application says is going to happen done. This determines if your proposal includes the necessary partnerships to meet your training workforce requirements that veterans need. Determines if the project makes appropriate use of the expertise and strengths of listed partners. So be sure to identify if your partners that you've listed are being utilized to the best of their ability and that they're very much in their wheelhouse. And that partners must play an important, but not necessarily large role in project design and development. And what that means is that anyone listed on your senior and key personnel or as a collaborative partner need not necessarily commit large swaths of time. It could be something like 0.10 FTE, full-time equivalent of their time. And that, for reference, is 4 hours a week. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a large role, but if what they're doing is important to the project, then that will be considered. And finally, projects must have equitable decision-making and an oversight process that includes all partners. So there's very much a balance to strike here, and having a broad set of partners that will help you complete your goals, but also including ways that you'll make sure all your partners and people working with you on this grant opportunity are going to have their voices heard. Now, relevancy. The proposal has to explain and show documentation how it's relevant towards increasing the number of veterans in the ag workforce or food workforce through education and training. Once again, I want to reiterate that these projects should be hitting on those two cylinders of practical outside experience and education classroom experience. So be sure to showcase both of those equally within your proposal and how those two factors will be relevant towards getting veterans into the food and ag workforce. You'll also be looking at describe the necessity of your programming. This is an important one and a very natural one if you're going to already be collaborating with veteran serving organizations, but how were veterans included in the conceptualizing of your project? How are they brought in to inform you of what veterans need to be put into the ag sector? And then also based on your past work. Here we have technical merit. This is going to be talking about items such as clarity and delineation of objectives, activities, and outcomes. How much are you breaking out into sections and effectively separating what you and your collaborators will be doing to get veterans into the ag and food workforce? How adequate the project is to actually meet the needs of veterans, especially in sustainability and feasibility. And that's why it's very important to have already established successes in working within some of these fields and bringing in a veteran to help you conceptualize your project, because then you'll have a better idea of what your project needs to do to reach veterans. Innovation and originality, and expected performance targets, outcomes, and impacts. Now, we already discussed that you need a plan for outcome-based reporting, and being able to adequately report and track the successes of your program will be a large piece of how successful your application is, because it shows that you're dedicated towards not only giving these veterans access and education to the food and ag space, but showcasing in a science-based way how that's done. And it helps this project be translational and help other programs take what you've learned and done and translate that to their own program. We also have adaptability of projects. Can it translate to other areas, communities, and ag sectors? That's translational ability. Sustainability of project collaborations beyond the life of the grant, or an explanation of how the project impact will carry on even if the collaboration itself is not sustained. So talking about how it'll be a long-lasting impact that will continue to help veterans enter this space. And then, of course, how reasonable the budget is for planned activities, making sure that you're spending the appropriate amount of money on your project activity. Achievability. So this touches on how likely your project or organization is to actually get these things done. So looking at your probability of success, looking at successfully identifying the pitfalls and how to address them. And that is why it is important to analyze your own project and organization gaps carefully and honestly. Being able to adequately display what your actual pitfalls are and how you plan to address them is a large boon in someone giving you a large amount of money and having you run with it to make a successful program. Accountability. And a description of the time commitment. So looking at directors and co-directors, implementation and project management, how long of a time those things will take, how many people you'll have actually managing that project, and how long it'll take to implement. And finally, some other factors. Timeline for how you're going to attain your objectives and carry them out. Clearly define the project roles amongst your collaborators and participants. Plans for decision making, and that should include your collaborators. And plans for administration of the project, including maintenance, partnerships, and collaborative efforts. So how the whole web of people that you've gathered for this project, how they're going to administer and carry out that program. Now, expertise and track record. This is, as we've said more than a few times, an explanation of how your previous successes will be informing the success of your current program. So the proposal team should demonstrate an existing expertise, especially by tracking the success of previous programs. And that's another reason it's so important to have an effective plan for outcome-based reporting, so you can continue to report the success of your own program. Here's some examples of ways that you can do that. Number of trainings or activities carried out previously, number of participants or graduates of previous programs that you and your team or collaborative team have engaged in, success rates and current occupations of participants. I think this is a very powerful statement because it shows that you may have already carried some veterans through some educational workshops and have gotten them jobs as farmers, ranchers, or FFA teachers, things of that sort. And the number of years a program or activity was offered, how sustainable and long-lived was that program. Now, as I've said, the longest titles tend to have the least amount of content. So the adequacy of plans for evaluation, reporting, data management, and communicating findings and results beyond the immediate target audience is based on the expertise and time commitment of the evaluation team members who agree to serve or have been identified. And then adequacy of available support. Now, again, collaborations. This is based on the expertise of people you'll consult with and the collaborators themselves, as well as sufficiency of the facilities and equipment you'll be using within your program or plan to use, and sufficiency of outreach methods. How are you going to be contacting veterans to get them into your program? Will it be through newspaper, through Facebook? Will it be a local gathering of people? Do you have local organizations that you plan on reaching out to gather interested veterans into your program? Now, prior to submitting the project, NIFA reserves the right to alter pieces of your project in a discussion with the PI or PD. And so some of those pieces that could be altered include the scope of your project. It might be too large, or maybe it could be larger based on your expertise, the project period, the budget, and the methods in which you'll be carrying out your project. Now, award administration. The starting date, as listed earlier, was September 15th. The effective date is to be listed as September 30th. The date doesn't have to start specifically on those days, but it should be close enough that you can go ahead and get all of your project deliverables completed. Fund usage. All funds must be utilized for project activities only. In terms of how you collect it, NIFA will work with you and tell you how to collect your funds if you are successfully funded. Reporting is, as we've mentioned before, a very large piece of this grant. And so the reporting activities are going to be done through this reporting portal, this Research Extension and Education Reporting Portal. This is a NIFA specific piece of the reporting puzzle, where they have all the forms and everything you'll need to report to them specifically. The 3 sections that you'll have to have in every single report are a non-technical summary of what's been going on within your program, a brief statement of the issue or problem and how you're addressing it, a description of the activities taking place and to address these issues, including all your relevant numbers and reporting factors that you want to make sure you're collecting, and a description of changes in knowledge, behaviors, and conditions related to target audience. And this is where the bulk of your quantitative or numerical data and qualitative or descriptive data will come in. So you could say 13 classes delivered to 40 veterans on days X, Y, and Z, and also have small surveys from those veterans talking about if they think that the classroom is a success or not, or what they felt about being out in the field. In terms of altering the budget or project plan, it's best to include everything that you're going to want within your project application, but things do change. Those changes will need to have NIFA approval. And so if NIFA does not contact you specifically about changing these things and you contact them, then it's bound to be a more difficult time. But some of the things you will need to contact them include a change in key personnel. If your organization disengages from the project for 3 months or more, if you change the scope of the project, even without changing the budget, or a 25% reduction in time devoted to the project from key staff. You'll see there FTE, I used that term before, full-time equivalent. Oops. Full-time equivalent is 40 hours. So if someone says they're working 1 FTE on a project, that is 40 hours. 0.5 FTE is 20 hours. This is often language used in regards to drafting a budget and assigning staff to your project. Other pieces include the inclusion of costs that require prior approval in accordance with these CFR chapters. We have all of these chapters linked within our own guide, our own application guide, so I didn't put links here. And we also have a transfer of funds for participant support costs to, to other areas of expense. Finally, we have subawarding, transferring or contracting out of any work under a federal award, including fixed subamount awards, unless described already in your application. So if you're adding someone after the fact, after you've already been awarded, that's a budget modification. If you have changes in the approved cost sharing or matching provided by the non-federal entity, and the need for additional federal funds to complete the project. So these are all ultimately conversations that you'll have with your NIFA point of contact. So please be sure to keep in good contact with them so that you can continue an honest discourse about what your project really needs to succeed. Now, though that was quite a lot of stuff, if you were just following along with the webinar, I highly recommend that you go to our website, nativeamericanagriculturefund.org, click on Resources, and download our AgVet application guide. It is going to more thoroughly go over the topics that we discussed, and it's not that long of a read. It's 10 pages, but it's truncating about 100 and some odd pages of USDA material. So it's got all the concise information that you'll need to craft the most powerful application that you can for this particular grant funding opportunity. If you need any information, please go ahead and email me, ggaither@nativeamericanagriculturefund.org, and I'll go ahead and answer your questions to the best of my ability. Thank you for attending our application guide webinar. Have a wonderful day.